My name is Evan. I'm 28, and for the past decade, I've been the unspoken safety net for my family. You know how every family has that one person, the one who picks up the slack, covers the bills, and makes sure no one falls through the cracks? That's me. It started small, a little help here, a bit of support there. But over time, it grew into a silent expectation. A role I never signed up for but somehow inherited. I'm the one who makes sure my parents' bills are paid. My sister Julia's car insurance is covered, and my younger brother Liam has enough to get by. It's not that I minded, at least not at first. I grew up watching my parents struggle working multiple jobs just to keep the lights on. So when I finally found my footing in my mid-20s, I made a promise to myself I'd make sure my family never felt that kind of stress again. But as the years went by, that support stopped feeling like a choice and started feeling like a burden. It was like a one-way street with me constantly pouring into them while they rarely, if ever, poured back. They took without hesitation, without appreciation, and I kept giving, telling myself it was just what families do. But my birthday this year changed everything. I had planned a small, intimate dinner at a cozy Italian bistro just 10 minutes from my apartment. It wasn't fancy, just a place with good pasta, warm lighting, and a quiet atmosphere, the kind of place where you can actually hear each other talk. I paid a non-refundable $300 deposit to reserve a private room. It was a small price to pay for a night of connection and celebration, or so I thought. I created a calendar invite, emailed it to each family member, and even sent personal text reminders a week before. My mom, my dad, Julia, her husband Matt, Liam, my cousin Alex, and his boyfriend Dylan. I even picked a place close to everyone's neighborhood to eliminate excuses. I double-checked the guest list, sent out a final reminder 2 days before, and confirmed the reservation with the restaurant. I wanted to make this as easy as possible for everyone. The night of my birthday, I arrived 15 minutes early. I wore a dark blue blazer my mom had gifted me last Christmas, a small reminder that she cared in her own way. I checked in with the hostess, made sure the table was set, and that the staff had my cake ready in the kitchen. I sat down, ordered a glass of wine, and waited. At first, I brushed off the silence. My family has never been the most punctual bunch. Maybe someone got stuck in traffic, or maybe Liam, notorious for his last-minute detours, had forgotten his phone again. I scrolled through my messages, hoping to see a running late, be there soon text, but nothing. 30 minutes passed. Then 45. The candle on my table flickered, casting long shadows against the untouched plates and polished silverware. The waiter checked in a few times, each time with a polite, slightly pitying smile. I told him I'd wait a bit longer. An hour slipped by, and the tight knot in my chest grew heavier. I felt a strange mix of embarrassment and anger, a bitter cocktail of emotions that made my pulse race. I checked my phone again, opening the family group chat. "Hey, is everything okay? I'm here whenever you all get in." No response. Then my phone buzzed. It wasn't a message though, it was a notification from Instagram. I clicked on it and my heart dropped. There it was, a fresh post from Julia. A group shot at a trendy steakhouse across town. There they all were, my parents. Julia and Matt, Liam, Alex, even Dylan, clinking glasses. All smiles plates, full of perfectly seared steaks. The caption read, "Family night. Grateful for the real ones, #blessed." I stared at the screen, frozen. It didn't make sense. I scrolled through the comments, my pulse pounding in my ears. An aunt had commented, "Looks like so much fun, missing Evan." And Julia, in her usual dismissive tone, had replied, "Oh, he had his own plans tonight, I think." My own plans. My own plans were to sit in this empty room at this empty table, celebrating a birthday no one bothered to show up for. I felt the blood drain from my face, my fingers going numb around my phone. I looked up at the room around me. The untouched place settings, the flickering candles, the small birthday cake I'd ordered waiting in the kitchen, and I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I tipped the waiter for his patience more than the untouched wine deserved and walked out. The cool night air hit me like a slap as I stepped outside. I walked to my car in a daze, the sound of traffic around me muffled my mind, replaying that Instagram post over and over. They hadn't just forgotten. They hadn't just miscommunicated. They had deliberately chosen to leave me out to gather together and share a meal without me on my birthday. And in that moment, standing alone on the sidewalk outside the restaurant, I felt something break inside me. It wasn't just anger, it was clarity. The drive home felt endless. Every red light, every slow turn, every passing car just gave my thoughts more room to twist the knife deeper. I replayed that Instagram post in my mind, every smiling face, every raised glass. They weren't just late. They hadn't just forgotten. They had deliberately chosen to leave me out. I pulled into my apartment complex, the familiar crunch of gravel under my tires sounding sharper in the silence. I parked, turned off the engine, but didn't get out. I just sat there staring at the darkened outline of my building, my hands still gripping the steering wheel. For years I had convinced myself that I didn't need much from my family, that the sacrifices I made were just part of being the reliable one, the dependable son, brother, cousin. I had told myself that my worth wasn't measured in thank yous or birthday toasts, but in that moment I felt the full weight of my own denial. They had moved on without me. I finally stepped out of the car, the cool night air cutting through my thin blazer, and made my way up to my apartment. The elevator ride felt painfully slow, each floor ticking by like a countdown to a realization I had been avoiding for years. When I reached my door, I fumbled for my keys, nearly dropping them as my hands shook. I stumbled inside, flicked on the lights, and collapsed onto the couch. My phone was still clutched in my hand, the glow of the Instagram post burning into my eyes. I opened the app again, scrolled through the comments, my heart tightening with every line. There it was again, Julia's dismissive reply, "Oh, he had his own plans tonight, I think." I felt a fresh wave of nausea. My own plans. As if I had chosen to sit alone in a restaurant surrounded by empty chairs and untouched plates while my family toasted without me. I dropped my phone onto the coffee table, the screen still lit, and leaned back, staring up at the ceiling. My apartment was quiet painfully, so the only sound the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I tried to piece it together to make sense of it, but the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. This wasn't a mistake, it wasn't a scheduling conflict or a miscommunication, it was deliberate. And the worst part? It wasn't the first time. I thought about last Christmas, when my parents forgot to tell me the family dinner had been moved to Julia's house, leaving me sitting alone in my own living room, waiting for a doorbell that never rang. I thought about the countless family group chats where my messages went unanswered, or worse, dismissed with a single emoji. I thought about the time I covered the entire cost of Julia and Matt's wedding photographer, only for Julia to thank everyone else in her speech, not even a passing mention of my contribution. I had written it all off as forgetfulness, as busy lives, as unintentional oversights. But this was different. This was exclusion dressed up in fancy dinners and filtered Instagram posts. I felt a sharp, bitter laugh escape my lips. I had spent years making excuses for them, telling myself that family meant sacrifice, that my role as the financial safety net was just part of the deal. I had covered rent, paid for insurance, sent emergency cash, and never once asked for anything in return. But tonight, sitting in that empty restaurant, I had seen it clearly. I wasn't family to them, I was a convenience. I leaned forward, my elbows on my knees, and buried my face in my hands. I felt the familiar sting of tears, but they didn't come. I was too numb, too shocked, too disappointed to even cry. After a few minutes, I straightened, took a deep breath, and reached for my phone. My banking app stared back at me from the home screen. I hesitated for a moment, my thumb hovering over the icon. Then with a deep breath, I tapped it open. The list of automated payments flashed up on the screen. Mom's rent $600 a month, Dad's car insurance $150 a month, Julia's car lease $300 a month, Liam's student loan top-up $200 a month. I scrolled down the list, each line a reminder of the silent, thankless support I had been providing for years. With a steady hand, I selected each one by one and hit cancel. Mom's rent gone, Dad's insurance gone, Julia's car lease gone, Liam's loan top-up gone. Each confirmation felt like a small, sharp release, like cutting a cord that had been wrapped too tightly around my chest. I set my phone down, leaned back, and closed my eyes. I expected to feel guilt, regret, some flicker of second thoughts, but all I felt was a strange, unfamiliar lightness, like I had just set down a weight I had been carrying for years. I opened my eyes, staring at the blank wall across from me. It felt different now, less like a cage and more like a blank canvas. I had been the silent support for so long, the one who fixed things without being asked, who solved problems without being acknowledged. But tonight, I had taken the first step in letting that go. I reached for my phone again, opened Instagram, and without overthinking it, posted a photo of my untouched birthday cake still sitting in the restaurant kitchen. The caption was simple. Reminder, I'm the one who pays Mom's rent and Dad's car insurance. No tags, no hashtags, just the truth. I hit post and set my phone down again. I leaned back into the couch, closed my eyes, and for the first time in years, I let the silence surround me. The next morning, I woke up to the sharp, vibrating buzz of my phone against my nightstand. I squinted at the bright screen, my eyes still heavy from a restless night. The notification bar was overflowing, missed calls, unread texts, even a few emails. I swiped through the list, my thumb pausing over my mom's name. 5 missed calls. I sighed, setting the phone back down, my mind still thick with the echoes of the night before. I had expected a reaction, but the sheer volume of messages surprised me. As I shuffled into the kitchen to make coffee, my phone buzzed again. Another text, this one from my dad. "Hey, got a notice about the car insurance. You might have forgotten to update your card. Call me when you can." I scoffed, dropping a spoonful of coffee grounds into the filter. "Forgotten? No, Dad. I didn't forget. I just decided to stop." The machine hissed to life, filling my small apartment with the comforting aroma of fresh coffee. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, staring at the slow drip of the dark liquid into the carafe. I could feel the weight of their messages pulling at the corners of my mind, each one a small, needy tug, like a child pulling on a parent's sleeve. Another buzz. This time it was Julia. The preview flashed across the screen before fading into the notification center. "Seriously, Evan, you couldn't just talk to us, you had to make a scene." I felt my jaw clench, a slow simmering heat spreading through my chest. I poured my coffee, took a slow sip, and set the cup down, leaning over the counter as I stared at my phone. I swiped it open, my fingers hovering over Julia's message. For a second I considered responding, maybe even explaining myself. But then I remembered that Instagram post, her flippant dismissive comment about my own plans, and my resolve hardened. I hit mark as read without replying. As I took my coffee to the living room, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a long message from my dad. "Evan, I don't know what's going on with you, but this insurance situation is serious. If something happens to the car, I can't afford the repairs out of pocket. You should have at least given us a heads up. Call me." A heads up. I sat down, the cup warm in my hands, the steam rising in slow twisting tendrils. They wanted a heads up. I thought back over the past few years, the countless bills, the unspoken financial safety net I had become, the way I had quietly held things together while they took it all for granted. Where was my heads up when they left me sitting alone in that restaurant? Where was my consideration when they decided to cut me out of my own birthday? I scrolled through my messages again. My mom had left a voicemail. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the play button. Finally, I hit it, holding the phone to my ear as I leaned back against the couch. "Hey, honey, I don't know if you got my messages. Just wanted to check in. I think something's off with the rent this month. Maybe a glitch? Give me a call when you get a chance. Love you." A glitch. I closed my eyes, letting out a long, slow breath. She didn't even consider that I might have done this on purpose. In her mind, I was still the dutiful son, the quiet supporter, the one who always came through, no matter how many times they pushed me aside. I set the phone down, my coffee now lukewarm and bitter against my tongue. I felt the familiar weight pressing against my chest, the same suffocating pressure that had driven me to cancel those payments in the first place. But this time I didn't back down. Instead, I opened my notes app, the blank white screen staring back at me, and started typing. List of financial support provided over the past 3 years. Mom's rent, $600 month, EUs, $21,600. Dad's car insurance, $150 month, EUs, $5,400. Julia's car lease, $300 month, equals $10,800. Liam's loan top-up, $200 month, equals $7,200. Charge. Emergency dental bill for Alex, $1,000. Miscellaneous family expenses, $5,000. Total $45,000. I stared at the number, my jaw tightening. $45,000. More than I had ever allowed myself to tally in my mind. I felt a sharp, bitter laugh rise in my throat, but it died before it reached my lips. I hadn't just been a safety net. I had been a full-on financial crutch, the silent backbone of a family that had chosen to cut me out on my own birthday. I hit save and set the phone down, leaning back against the couch, my eyes tracing the cracks in the ceiling. I felt the tightness in my chest loosen just a little, as if some invisible cord had finally snapped. The rest of the day passed quietly. I ignored the buzzing phone, the messages stacking up like unpaid bills, and instead focused on the small, mundane tasks I had been putting off for weeks. I cleaned my apartment, reorganized my bookshelves, even cooked myself a proper dinner for the first time in months. As I sat down to eat, the sun casting long golden shadows across my living room, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, peace. And as the evening crept in, I found myself reaching for my phone, not to check my messages, but to scroll through photos to remind myself of the life I had been building outside of my family's shadow. I had friends, I had a career, I had a life that didn't revolve around being the unspoken support system for people who barely saw me as a person. I took a deep breath, set my phone down, and allowed myself to enjoy the quiet, the absence of their voices, their demands, their expectations. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. 3 days. That's how long it took for the silence to crack. I had expected a bit more time, maybe a week or two, but I underestimated the ripple effect of my absence. I had been the quiet, unseen pillar holding up the fragile structure of my family's financial stability. Without me, the cracks had started to spread. It began with another voicemail from my mom. Her usually bright tones strained the chipper notes of her earlier messages gone. Evan, I got a second notice from the building manager today. They said the rent still hasn't been paid. I don't understand. Did something happen with your account? Please call me. I'm worried. I played the message twice, leaning back on my couch, eyes closed as her words echoed in the small, quiet space of my apartment. There was no mention of my birthday, no apology, no acknowledgement of the dinner I had sat through alone. Just a thinly veiled panic about the rent, as if that was the only thing that mattered. 2 hours later, a text from my dad. Hey kiddo, just got a letter from the insurance company. Says the car isn't covered anymore. I know you're busy, but you really should have given me a heads up. This is serious. I felt my jaw tighten, a slow, simmering heat building in my chest. A heads up. As if I hadn't spent years giving silent financial heads-ups with every automated payment, every quiet bailout, every emergency transfer. I set my phone down, trying to shake off the familiar, suffocating sense of obligation. I had made my choice. I had cut the cord. They just hadn't realized it yet. Then later that evening, Julia's name flashed across my screen. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the decline button before I sighed, swiped to answer, and brought the phone to my ear. Evan, she snapped before I could even say hello. Her voice sharp and accusatory. What the hell is going on? Why did Mom just call me in tears talking about eviction notices? Why is Dad blowing up my phone about his insurance? Did you seriously cancel everything without even telling us? I leaned back against the kitchen counter, staring out the window at the city lights, my other hand gripping the edge of the counter to keep myself grounded. I didn't realize I owed you an explanation, I replied, my voice calm, almost detached. I just figured it was time for a change. A change, she shot back, her tone dripping with disbelief. Evan, this isn't just about you. You've put them in a really bad spot. You know they can't afford these things without you. I closed my eyes, the words hitting me like small, sharp stones. The familiar guilt tried to claw its way back, but I pushed it down, took a deep breath, and exhaled slowly. Julia, I said, keeping my tone steady. I sat alone on my birthday while you all toasted without me across town. I paid for a room I never got to use, for a dinner no one showed up to. And when I found out you had the nerve to tell the whole family I had my own plans, like I chose to be left out. There was a long pause, the line crackling faintly in the silence. I could almost picture her standing in her perfectly curated kitchen, her manicured fingers gripping the phone, eyes narrowed in frustration. That's not the same thing. She finally muttered, her voice a notch lower, defensive. You know how it is. Things got mixed up. We thought you were doing your own thing. You never seemed to care about these things anyway. I felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat, but I swallowed it, my jaw tightening. You thought I didn't care? I repeated, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. Julia, I have been covering for this family for years. I've paid bills, covered emergencies, and picked up every financial piece you all let fall. And the one time I wanted to celebrate something, the one night I asked for a bit of your time, you all cut me out without a second thought. She sucked in a sharp breath, the sound harsh against my ear. Evan, you're being dramatic, she snapped, her tone cutting. Family isn't about keeping score. I felt my grip on the counter tighten, the cool edge pressing into my palm, grounding me in the moment. I'm not keeping score, Julia, I said, my voice steady, each word deliberate. But maybe I should have been. Maybe if I had, I would have seen this coming a long time ago. Another silence, this one longer, heavier, like the air before a storm. So what she finally said, her voice quieter now, the sharp edges dulled. You're just cutting us off. Is that it? You're walking away. I leaned my head back, staring at the cracked paint on the ceiling, the corners where the plaster had started to peel. I'm not walking away, I replied, my voice calm, almost detached. I'm just finally choosing myself. I hung up before she could respond, the sharp click of the call ending echoing in the stillness of my apartment. I set my phone down on the counter, the weight of the conversation settling over me like a thick, suffocating fog. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and felt the tightness in my chest loosen just a little. For the first time in years, I felt like I had taken a step out of their shadow, away from the quiet, unspoken expectations that had bound me to them for so long. I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, leaned against the counter, and stared out at the city lights. The world outside felt different, sharper, more real, like I was seeing it for the first time without the weight of their demands on my shoulders. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Days turned into weeks and the messages slowly tapered off. The first few days had been chaotic: missed calls, frantic texts, even a handful of emails from my parents, each one more desperate than the last. But as my silence stretched on, they seemed to realize that this time I wasn't backing down. Then one Saturday morning, there was a knock at my door. I paused, my coffee cup halfway to my lips, the familiar tension knotting in my stomach. I set the cup down, took a deep breath, and walked to the door. Through the peephole, I saw Liam. Hoodie, hands in pockets, head slightly bowed. I hesitated for a moment, the memories of that empty birthday dinner still sharp in my mind, but finally I unlocked the door and swung it open. "Hey," he said, his voice quiet, uncertain. "Can I come in?" I stepped back, letting him slip inside. He glanced around my apartment, his eyes lingering on the small stack of unopened bills on the kitchen counter, the same ones I had ignored for weeks, as I let my own life settle into a new, quieter rhythm. Liam shuffled over to the couch, sitting down awkwardly, his hands fidgeting in his lap. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, waiting. I just wanted to check on you," he said finally, his eyes fixed on the floor. "You've been, I don't know, distant. Mom's freaking out. Dad's worried. Even Julia's been quieter than usual." I felt a bitter smile tug at the corners of my mouth, but I pushed it down, keeping my face neutral. "Distant?" I echoed, my tone flat. "Is that what they're calling it?" Liam looked up, his face a mixture of confusion and guilt. "Look, I know things got a little complicated, but this whole cutting us off thing, it's a bit extreme, don't you think?" I felt my jaw tighten, the old familiar anger sparking in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Liam," I said slowly, choosing my words carefully, "do you even realize what you're asking me for right now?" He blinked, his brow furrowing slightly. "What do you mean?" I sighed, running a hand through my hair as I leaned against the counter. "You're sitting here in my apartment asking me to go back to being the quiet, reliable backup plan, the one who always bails everyone out, without even acknowledging why I stopped in the first place." He opened his mouth to protest, but I cut him off, my tone sharper than I intended. "You all left me alone on my birthday, Liam. You toasted without me, made me the butt of some unspoken family joke, and then had the nerve to act like it was my choice, like I just had my own plans." He shifted uncomfortably, his hands twisting together in his lap. I didn't think you'd care that much. You never seemed like the type to worry about that stuff." I felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat, but I swallowed it down, my fists clenching at my sides. "That's the problem, Liam," I said, my voice low but firm. "You all assume I don't care because I never ask for anything, because I never complain, because I'm the one who quietly fixes everything without making a fuss." He looked down, his face flushed, the weight of my words finally settling on him. "I'm not just a bank account, Liam." I continued, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "I'm not just the guy who covers your rent, pays for your insurance, and bails you out when things get tight. I'm your brother, and you all forgot that." The silence stretched between us, heavy and uncomfortable. I watched as his shoulders slumped, the realization finally hitting him. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice barely audible. I didn't see it that way." I took a deep breath, feeling the tightness in my chest ease just a little. "I know you didn't," I replied, my tone softer now. "But that doesn't change what happened. I can't keep being the one who always gives, who always sacrifices, without ever being seen." He looked up, his eyes wide, a hint of panic creeping into his expression. "So, what now? Are you just cutting us all off? Is that it?" I hesitated, the words sticking in my throat, the part of me that had always craved their approval still fighting for control. "I'm not cutting you off, Liam," I said finally, my voice steady. "I'm just setting boundaries. I'm choosing myself for once. If you want to be in my life, you have to show up, not just when you need something, but when it actually matters." He nodded slowly, the weight of my words settling over him like a heavy blanket. He stood up, his hands still stuffed in his pockets, his gaze fixed on the floor. "I get it," he said quietly, his voice thick. "I really do. I hope you'll give us a chance to make it right." I watched him walk to the door, his steps slow, his head bowed. He paused in the doorway, his hand resting on the handle, his back to me. "Thanks for letting me in," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't respond. I just watched as he slipped out the door, clicking softly behind him, the echo of his footsteps fading into the hallway. I leaned back against the counter, closing my eyes as the quiet settled over my apartment once more. I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness, the weight of years of unspoken expectations finally beginning to lift. I had no idea what the future held, whether my family would change, whether they would ever truly see me for who I was, not just what I provided. But in that moment, standing alone in my quiet apartment, I felt a small flickering spark of hope, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Story 2. I don't think I'll ever forget the day my world quietly rearranged itself. I was 7 in a faded pink dress and jelly sandals, holding a stuffed flamingo named Birdie when my mom and dad told me they were getting divorced. No yelling, no drama, just two tired adults explaining how I'd now have 2 homes. At the time, I didn't cry. I think I was too young to understand the permanence of it all. Mom kept the house, Dad moved across town. I got 2 bedrooms and a weekly suitcase rotation. Weirdly efficient, like shared custody via Google Calendar. Things stayed okay for a while. About a year later, Dad introduced me to his new girlfriend, Lillian. She had this calm, no-nonsense vibe and a kid around my age named Jake. We met at this outdoor diner eating curly fries and watching birds pick at scraps under tables. Jake was talkative and weird in a fun way. Lillian said, "Hi Ava, your dad says you're brilliant." And I liked her right then. No fake perkiness, just sincerity. Meanwhile, at Mom's place, things shifted fast. She met Ron. He was always in a rush, always closing some huge deal over Bluetooth. He moved in before I even learned his last name. A few months later, my half-sister Bella was born. She came into the world pink, loud, and instantly adored. And that was the beginning of me fading into the wallpaper. No slaps, no screaming, just neglect by 1,000 paper cuts. A missed parent-teacher conference here, a forgotten birthday there. I remember standing in the rain after school for nearly an hour until my teacher finally called Mom. She forgot. Bella's mommy and me class ran late, she said. The class that mattered. Not the daughter who stood soaked clutching a crayon drawing. I stopped trying to stand out. At Dad and Lillian's house, I wasn't just noticed, I was seen. They asked questions, remembered things. Jake and I became siblings in every sense of the word. When they married, they included us in everything. Dad even read vows to both of us. "I'm not just marrying Lillian," he said, choking up. "I'm becoming part of a team, Jake, Ava, Lillian, and me." I still have that moment saved in my mind like a Polaroid I refuse to shake. But at Mom's, I was a backup dancer in the Bella show. She'd take her to ballet recitals, mommy brunches. I'd ask if she wanted help setting the table and she'd say, "No thanks, Bella likes doing it with me." I was 12 when I realized I'd slowly become a guest in my own house. Eventually, I stopped going. I just stayed at Dad's. No dramatic conversation, no slam-the-door rebellion. I just didn't return after a weekend. Mom didn't call for days. When she did, it wasn't to ask how I was, but to guilt me back into the custody schedule. Not out of love, out of money. Dad had been sending child support, and if I was with him full-time, that would stop. That's when I understood. I wasn't a daughter, I was a paycheck. Bella, by the way, was a master at delivering emotional shrapnel. "Ron says you're not really part of the family," she once said while licking a popsicle. "He says once you're 18 you won't be around and mommy won't cry." She was 8. She said it like she was reciting the weather report. It stung. But by then I'd grown calluses over every wound. So I built a different life. Dad and Lillian were my constants. Jake became my best friend. I crushed high school, made National Honor Society, and landed a spot in a top-tier finance program with a partial scholarship. I remember sitting in the living room, nervously twisting my acceptance letter, asking if they could help cover the rest. I didn't even finish the sentence before Lillian handed me a folder. "We've been saving for this since you were 9, she said. That summer, I worked at a local cafe 6 a.m., shifts grinding lattes and tips into a tiny nest egg. Every dollar went into my savings account. I wanted to help pay for dorm essentials and maybe one day get a place of my own. Mom didn't call, didn't ask where I was going or what I was studying. I saw on Facebook that she threw Bella a graduation party for finishing 8th grade. By the time I was halfway through college, I had my rhythm. Classes, part-time job, occasional phone calls with Dad and Lillian. I didn't need anything from my mother. I told myself I didn't even want anything from her. But that was before the trap was set. It started subtle. "Oh, we miss you" text. Then a dinner invite. Just to catch up. Ron was grilling. Bella was so excited to see me. I should have been more suspicious. At dinner, they were all smiles. Ron asked vague questions about my job. Bella complimented my watch, my graduation gift from Lillian. Wow, Mom said. Must be nice to have things going so well. And then she dropped it. So, we were thinking. She began passing the salad. Bella's been looking for apartments now that she's finishing college, and we realized it would be such a nice gesture if her successful older sister could help. I blinked. Help how? With a down payment. You've got all that money saved and Bella's just starting out. I didn't say anything for a full 5 seconds. You're serious, I said finally. You want me to give my savings so Bella can have an apartment? It's not giving. Mom snapped. It's family. She needs help. Then help her, I said. You're her parents. Mom's face hardened. You're being selfish. I laughed, an actual involuntary bark of laughter. You forgot my birthdays for years. You missed every event. You let Bella mock me in my own house. But I'm the selfish one. Ron started muttering something about responsibility, but I was done. I left that night knowing 2 things. I'd never see them the same again. They weren't done trying. They proved me right a week later. I was heading overseas for a conference. 10 days in Singapore. Before I left, I made the mistake of telling Mom. Just wanted to let you know I'll be unreachable, I said on autopilot. When I landed and turned my phone on, over 30 banking notifications lit up my screen. Account transfers, large ones, thousands. My hands went cold. One name kept popping up on the transfers: Patricia Moore. My mother. I didn't scream. I didn't even swear. I just stood in the hotel lobby, suitcase in one hand, phone in the other, reading each notification like they were pages in a horror novel. $2,000 withdrawn, $3,500 transferred, $1,750 missing. All sent to the same name, Patricia Moore, my mother. I logged into my bank app. The savings account I'd been building for years gone. Not drained, but gutted. Just enough left to make it seem like I was bad with money, not robbed. I called my bank immediately. Spoke to someone named Ethan who confirmed it wasn't a glitch. Yes, ma'am, these were logged as online transfers. Same device, same IP as your last login. I froze. My laptop. I'd left it open at home before flying out. That day, Bella had been over to catch up. I was making coffee. She was sitting on the couch. She must have seen it, the balance, the transfers, my passcode. I felt sick. By the time I landed back home, I'd barely slept. I walked straight into my apartment, dropped my bag, and checked every drawer. Nothing missing. But I noticed the door lock was off, like it had been unscrewed and put back slightly crooked. And then it clicked. That weird visit a few weeks ago when Mom had stopped by out of nowhere, claiming she needed to use the bathroom. I remember she stayed in there longer than necessary. It takes about 3 minutes to make a key copy. I called her. She answered on the second ring like she'd been waiting. Oh honey, welcome back. How was Singapore? Did you steal from me? Silence. Then excuse me. I didn't play games. Don't lie to me. I have the transfer records. I know it was you. Still quiet. Then she gave me a small laugh. The kind people use when they think they're still in control. Well, she said calm as ever. You weren't going to help Bella, so we had to help her ourselves. I asked, jaw tight. Ron and I. Bella was crying herself to sleep over the stress. You have no idea what she's going through. You don't need all that money right now, Ava. You have a stable job, no family to support. Bella's just starting. I worked for that, I said quietly. Every shift, every early morning, every budget spreadsheet. Mom sighed like I was the one making this difficult. You'll earn it back, but Bella. She needs it now. We already found a nice apartment, signed the lease. She's moving next week. It wasn't even a conversation to her. She'd already decided. That's when I walked out the door, phone in hand, and drove straight to her place. Ron opened the door like he'd been waiting too. He gave me this smug, tired smirk like I was an inconvenience he was prepared to ignore. She's busy, he said, blocking the doorway. Move. He didn't. I pushed past him. Mom was in the living room sipping wine like it was just another Tuesday. You're really going to throw a fit over some money, she said without even looking at me. I'm pressing charges, I said. That got her attention. She lowered the glass. Excuse me? You stole from me. I've got all the screenshots. I've already called the bank. They flagged the transactions. Next step's the police. You're not serious. I walked up, stared her dead in the eyes. Return it, or the next person calling you won't be me. It'll be a detective. She smirked. You're bluffing. No, I said, turning toward the door. You're gambling. That night I filed the report. Police station. Downtown. Cold fluorescent lights. I handed over my phone with the screenshots, bank statements, my travel itinerary, all proving I'd been out of the country. My apartment, no sign of break-in. but I had video proof of her bathroom visit. I had enough. And they agreed. Within 48 hours, she was called in for questioning. A detective even told me privately she didn't deny it. Just said she thought it wasn't a big deal. Not a big deal. Like she hadn't taken years of work. Like she hadn't shattered the last illusion I had that she might love me like a daughter instead of a dollar sign. Ron called that night. You need to drop this. Your mother is devastated. You mean exposed. You're tearing this family apart. I laughed into the phone. You did that years ago. I'm just documenting it. The legal process was weirdly fast. Maybe because I had receipts for everything. Maybe because Mom was just that arrogant. When it reached court, her lawyer tried to argue it was a misunderstanding, that she believed she had access, that I would have forgiven her anyway. The judge didn't buy it. Unauthorized access. Fraud. Premeditation, he said, listing it off like a grocery receipt. Miss Moore, you're lucky your daughter isn't pressing for jail time. She was sentenced to full restitution and given a suspended sentence. 30 days to return everything, plus interest, plus legal fees. She cried in court, in public, real tears. Too bad she didn't spare any when she emptied my savings account. The moment court ended, I walked straight out the building. Didn't look back. Lillian hugged me in the parking lot like she'd been holding her breath through the entire trial. I'm proud of you, she said. I didn't say anything. I was too tired. Not just from the legal mess, but from carrying years of rejection, hoping for something, anything from Mom that resembled love. All I ever got was expectation. A few days later, I changed my locks, got a security system, new laptop, new passwords, and a restraining order. No contact, not with her, not with Ron, not with Bella. Funny thing, Bella posted pictures on Instagram a week later, first apartment, so excited, and in the comments, Big Sis helped make this possible. I didn't comment, I didn't correct. Let her have the lie. She'd learn soon enough what happens when you build your home on stolen ground. Meanwhile, I went back to work. Mark, my boss, Lillian's brother, but more like a mentor, called me into his office 2 weeks later. I heard about what happened, he said. You okay? I nodded. He pushed a folder across the desk. Client promotion, you've earned it. I opened it. A new title. A raise. Bigger bonus. A note in his handwriting. Don't let them take your fire. We see you. That night I cried. Not because I was sad, but because someone finally saw me. Not as a tool, not as a wallet, just Ava. Lillian and Dad took me out to dinner. Jake tagged along, teasing me about being Miss VP of Finance now. Next step, I told them, is a house. One with a garden. A kitchen big enough for Sunday dinners. Dad raised his glass. To the home you build for you. And I knew this time no one was copying my keys. 6 months later, I was sitting in my car outside a 3-bedroom colonial with dark blue siding, white trim, and a maple tree out front that spilled gold into the yard like confetti. The house wasn't fancy, but it was warm, real, the kind of place you could breathe inside. The first time I stepped in for a showing, it already felt like home. It wasn't the kitchen layout or the little reading nook by the window. It was the silence, a kind of stillness that says you don't owe anyone anything in here. The mortgage paperwork took longer than I expected, but eventually the call came. Loan approved. I signed with hands that didn't shake in an office that smelled like ink and old carpet. When they handed me the keys, I didn't cry, I just smiled. I had a house. My house. Lillian cried though. She hugged me so tight I couldn't breathe. Dad stood in the driveway that afternoon with a can of white paint already testing swatches on the fence. Jake showed up with 2 pizzas, a toolkit, and a Bluetooth speaker blasting bad 2000s rap. We didn't even furnish the place right away. We sat on the hardwood floor eating greasy slices and passing around a single folding chair like royalty. That night when they left, I stayed up till 2 a.m. just walking through the rooms, touching the walls. This room will be the office, that one a guest room, and this one will be mine. No one had a copy of the key, no one knew the alarm code but me. And no one was ever going to walk in and decide they deserved what I built. It was quiet revenge. Not the screaming courtroom kind, the kind you build with bricks and boundaries. But of course that wasn't the end. People like my mother don't vanish quietly. They reappear through cracks, through relatives, through carefully staged messages. The first one came from my Aunt Carol, Mom's sister. She messaged me on Facebook. Your mother is heartbroken. She made a mistake, but family forgives. Can't you just talk? I didn't answer. The second message came from an old neighbor, someone I barely remembered. Patricia told me what happened. Seems like there's been a misunderstanding. You know how moms are. I know exactly how mine is. Then came the letter. Real paper, mailed, addressed in her handwriting. I sat with it in my lap for a full hour before opening it. She didn't apologize, not really. She said she'd been under pressure, that she panicked, that she didn't mean to hurt me, that Bella was struggling, that I had always been stronger. And then she wrote, "You've built such a nice life. Surely there's room in it for your mother." I folded the letter back up and slid it into a drawer. Not the trash, not the fire. Just filed away, out of sight. That's all she ever was to me when I needed her most. Background noise. I didn't reply. Instead, I kept living. I painted the kitchen yellow, hung up a rack of coffee mugs, bought a second-hand couch and a set of mismatched chairs that somehow worked together. Dad and I spent weekends doing little repairs, gutters, screens, hinges. Lillian brought over candles and rugs and photos of all of us from when I was a teenager framed like they belonged. Jake set up my Wi-Fi and hooked up the TV. Then he texted me later that week. Weird question, but can I come hang here during finals? Feels calmer than home. That's when I knew. This wasn't just a house. It was a safe place, a soft landing, a line in the sand. And the past, it could stay on the other side. Bella tried once more. Showed up at my door. I saw her through the peephole, long coat, phone in hand, a little too put together for a casual visit. I didn't open it. She knocked once, twice. Left a voicemail. "I think we should talk. Mom's been really sick about everything. She's not well. She keeps saying she just wants her family back." I deleted it. Sick or not, guilt doesn't grant access. And forgiveness isn't the same as amnesia. That weekend, I hosted my first dinner party. Just 5 people. Dad, Lillian, Jake, my friend Emily from work, and her girlfriend June. We cooked together, laughed over wine, ate too much. At one point, Jake lifted a glass and said, "To Ava, who built something better than what she was given." They clinked their glasses, and I smiled. Later, Emily pulled me aside in the kitchen. "Your family's awesome," she said. I just nodded. "Yeah, they are." I didn't say they weren't all related to me by blood. That didn't matter anymore. Love built this house. Loyalty filled it. That's what makes people family. Not last names, not who shares your face, not who used to kiss your forehead at bedtime, but forgot your birthday every year after. People who choose you. People who see you. That's what matters. I don't think I'll ever get a real apology from my mother, or from Ron, or even Bella. But I don't need it. What I needed was to reclaim my story. To stop waiting for someone to care enough to choose me and choose myself instead. That's not revenge in the Hollywood sense. No shouting matches, no viral exposés, no fireworks. Just silence. And peace. And a locked front door that only opens for love. Epilogue. Last week, I planted a lemon tree in the backyard. Lillian helped me pick it out. Dad dug the hole. Jake took photos and made bad puns about sour beginnings. I stood there afterward, fingers in the dirt, knees smudged with soil, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Safe. That night, I lit a candle by the window and watched the lights in the backyard flicker under the stars. I thought about how it all started with a stolen account, a copied key, a mother who thought love was conditional and money was hers by birthright. And how it ended with me in a home I made with people I trust, and not a single part of me left waiting to be chosen. Some people call it revenge. I call it freedom. Story 3. If you had told me 3 years ago that the woman who'd become the most dependable part of my life would be the same person who once hated my guts, I would have laughed in your face. But here we are. I'm 31 now, divorced, raising my 7-year-old son Dylan in a modest apartment just outside Portland, and doing everything without the support of the people who should have had my back from day one, my parents. When my ex-husband Jason left me, I wasn't shocked. Hurt, sure. Betrayed, absolutely. But surprised? Not really. The signs had been piling up: late nights at work, a sudden gym obsession, a perfume that wasn't mine lingering on his jacket. Turns out he'd been seeing some 20-something creative assistant behind my back. I found out the day after our son's 6th birthday. So I did what any shell-shocked, suddenly single mom would do. I packed up our things and moved closer to my parents. It felt like the logical move. Built-in family support, familiar faces, an easier transition for Dylan, but logic doesn't always factor in emotional landmines. See, my relationship with my parents had always been fragile. They adored my younger brother Zach, showered him with praise, bailed him out of mess after mess, acted like he was the sun itself. Me, I was the overthinker, the too sensitive one. When Jason left, they didn't say, "We're here for you." They said, "Maybe if you'd been a little more understanding." Still, I clung to the hope that grandparenthood might soften them. I was wrong. The first time I asked them to watch Dylan for a weekend work trip, you'd have thought I asked them to adopt a rescue dog with behavioral issues. My dad looked up from his crossword and said, "We're not built-in babysitters, Nora." My mom, arms folded, added, "We didn't retire to raise another child." I swallowed my pride and offered to pay them whatever nannies cost plus more. And just like that, they became slightly more receptive, though never without a guilt trip or a snide remark about how Zach's kids never act out like this. Yes, Zach, the golden boy. 2 kids by 2 different women, 0 stable jobs, and somehow always the center of their affection. When his kids come over, my parents roll out the red carpet. There are cookies, cartoons, and foot rubs. When I drop off Dylan, it's okay. Dylan, go sit quietly in the guest room. Mommy and I need to talk. And by talk they mean suggest I start dating again. My mom keeps name-dropping eligible dentists and pharmacists as if I'm shopping for a new handbag. Dr. Harris's son is recently divorced, she said once while handing me a plate of leftover meatloaf. Twice, actually. But the second one wasn't his fault. She ran off with her yoga instructor. I'm not interested, Mom, I told her. Again, I'm focused on Dylan and my job. That's your problem, Nora, my dad muttered. Too picky. That's probably why Jason left. I didn't argue. What was the point? Then came the day everything really snapped. I woke up on a Tuesday feeling like I'd been hit by a bus. Fever, chills. Every breath felt like I was inhaling razors. Dylan, bless him, was sitting cross-legged in the living room watching cartoons and munching dry cereal. You sound funny, Mommy, he said, big eyes wide with concern. I told him I just had a cold and called in sick, but by mid-morning I could barely stand. I didn't want to risk Dylan catching whatever hell virus this was, so I texted my parents asking if they could take him for a few days. Their response, "Of course, but we'll need the money up front this time." Yes, my own parents asked me to prepay them to watch their grandson while I was sick, but I was desperate. I made the transfer, packed Dylan's overnight bag, and dropped him off coughing through my mask. I thanked them through clenched teeth and stumbled back home. By nightfall, things went from bad to terrifying. I couldn't breathe. I saw black spots when I stood. I barely managed to call 911 before collapsing onto the floor. I was rushed to the hospital and diagnosed with severe pneumonia. The doctor said I'd need to stay for 2 weeks minimum. My first thought, Dylan. My second, my job. I called my boss, who thankfully was compassionate, and then my parents. Big mistake. 2 weeks, my mom shrieked. Nora, we leave for the Caribbean in 3 days. It's a family trip. Zach and the kids are going too. Mom, I wheezed. Please, I'll pay you double. Whatever it takes, just please don't leave Dylan alone. There was a pause. I could almost hear her mentally calculating. Well, she finally said, we spent $8,000 on this vacation. If you can cover that, plus our cancellation fees, we'll consider it. $8,000. I choked. Mom, I'm in a hospital bed, barely breathing. I'm sorry you're sick, she said, not sounding sorry at all. But you always expect people to drop everything for you. Then she hung up. I tried calling back. Voicemail. I tried again. Blocked. Lying in that sterile hospital bed surrounded by beeping monitors, I realized something sharp and undeniable. I was on my own. I stared at my contact list, scanning for anyone who might help. Friends I hadn't been in Portland long enough to build a solid village. Co-workers too new. Neighbors, strangers, really. Then I saw a name I'd tried to pretend didn't exist, Janice, my former mother-in-law. We hadn't spoken since the divorce. Even before that, she never liked me. Thought I wasn't wife material for her precious Jason. Always hinting that I should lose weight, speak less, be softer. But I had no one else. With a deep breath and shaky fingers, I called her. She picked up on the second ring. Nora, she sounded confused. Is everything okay? I broke down. Told her everything, the illness, the hospital, the parental betrayal. Jason being MIA, his new girlfriend was having a baby any day now, and Dylan being days away from who knows what. There was silence. Then firmly, text me your address and theirs. I'll get him. And she did. The next morning I got a text from her. Picked up Dylan. He's safe. Focus on getting better. Then a photo of Dylan grinning ear to ear, holding a stuffed dinosaur and eating pancakes. I burst into tears. Janice. Janice had stepped up when my own parents slammed the door. That's when things began to change. The second week in the hospital passed slowly, like watching paint dry, but the paint was anxiety and the fumes were emotional whiplash. I was exhausted, physically wrecked, and emotionally shredded. But then the updates started rolling in. Janice didn't just take Dylan, she showed up. She kept me posted every day. Pictures of him doing puzzles, baking cookies, even walking their old corgi buster. Her texts weren't sugary or sentimental, just straightforward stuff like, we made spaghetti. He helped stir. Or, he likes his bedtime story loud. I read it loud. And you know what? That was enough. One morning she called and asked, he wants to visit. You up for it? God, yes. A few hours later, the door opened and Dylan tiptoed in, holding a handmade card that said, "Get well soon, Mommy," in messy crayon. Janice followed behind holding a grocery bag. Hospital food's garbage, she said, unloading homemade chicken soup crackers and lemon cookies. Eat, you'll heal faster. I laughed weakly. Didn't know you were a soup evangelist. She just shrugged. Sick people need real food, not powdered broth and mystery meat. And just like that, the walls between us started to dissolve. The next few days they visited daily. Janice even brought a tiny whiteboard so Dylan could draw while we talked. She'd update me on how he was sleeping, eating, adjusting. He's polite, she said once. A little quiet but sharp. Smart like his mom. I blinked. That was the first kind thing she'd ever said to me. You really think so? She looked me dead in the eye. I was wrong about you, Nora. I can admit that. And there it was. It didn't undo years of snide comments or raised eyebrows, but it meant something. She didn't owe me anything. Jason had left me, and technically I wasn't her problem anymore. But she still stepped up. Meanwhile, my parents hadn't called once. No, how are you? No hope you're getting better. Just silence. After I was discharged, Janice brought Dylan home, and when I walked through the door of our apartment, I just stopped. It was spotless. The fridge was full, laundry folded, toys sorted. She'd even pinned up a little "Welcome Home Mommy" banner Dylan had colored with markers. Did you clean my apartment? I asked, stunned. She nodded. Wasn't hard. Just took a little structure. I didn't ask you to do that. I know. That's why I did it. It hit me then, family isn't who shares your blood. It's who shows up, no questions asked. A few weeks later, I was easing back into work, still tired but grateful for my job, and even more grateful for a new babysitter, Mila. Young, energetic, early childhood major. Dylan adored her. Every time I left for work, I knew he was in good hands. I no longer even considered asking my parents. That bridge wasn't just burned, it was vaporized. But life, as it tends to do, had other plans. One random Wednesday evening, I was making dinner when my phone buzzed. Unknown number, area code from back home. I let it ring, then voicemail. Curiosity got the better of me. I listened. Nora? It's your father. Call us back. It's about Zach. Of course it was. I waited a full day before calling back. My mom picked up. Nora, she breathed like I was her long-lost lifeline. What's going on? It's your brother, she said quickly. He left. Left what? Everything, she whispered. His girlfriend. The kids. Us. He said he needed a break and just went off to Vegas with some woman he met online. I blinked. You're kidding. I wish I was. He left the girls with us, no warning, no supplies, nothing. I stayed quiet. I could see it all in my head, the chaos, the tantrums, the unpaid bills piling up. They weren't equipped for this. Then the kicker. We thought maybe you could send some money. Help out. I actually laughed. You want me to help? After what you did when I was in the hospital? My mom scoffed. That was different. Was it? I asked. Because I remember you threatening to leave Dylan outside if I didn't pay you 10 grand. We had plans. And I had pneumonia. You chose beachside cocktails over your own grandson. We didn't know how serious it was. Stop, I cut in. You knew, you just didn't care. There was silence. Then we're family, Nora. You don't just turn your back on family. Funny, I said, that's exactly what you did. And then I hung up. I expected guilt, some lingering ache, maybe even second-guessing myself. But there was none of that. The truth is, the peace I'd found Dylan thriving me stable. Janice involved in a healthy way. It wasn't something I was willing to trade for a second chance with people who'd never prioritized me. Not anymore. A week later, I got another text from my mom. We'll just bring the girls to your place if you won't help. Then you'll have no choice. I replied with 4 words, we don't live there. Then I blocked the number. By spring, Janice and I were talking every few days. She'd drop by to help Dylan with school projects or take him to the park when I had meetings. She'd never been warm in the typical grandmother way, but she was reliable, steady. She showed love in actions, not words. One afternoon, she brought over a flyer. My brother's company is hiring, she said, handing it to me. They need someone with your background. I glanced at it. The job title alone made me blink. Senior Marketing Strategist. Double my current salary. Flexible hours. Relocation support. Wow. She smirked. I told him about you. He liked your portfolio. I was floored. You really believe in me that much? She looked at me deadpan. Nora, you've been holding everything together by dental floss and determination. You're not just good, you're exceptional. So I took the leap. accepted the offer. We moved to a new city 2 months later. Dylan adjusted better than I did. New school, new friends, and an actual yard to play in. Janice moved too. Not with us, but close enough. She said retirement was boring and she liked being useful. Dylan called her Grandma J now. It just stuck. 2 years can change everything. The days stopped feeling like a battle and started flowing like a quiet stream. Dylan was thriving, making friends, scoring goals in his little soccer league, and coming home excited about volcano experiments or book fair day. I'd been promoted to senior director last fall, and for once work didn't feel like a lifeline, it felt like purpose. Our new home wasn't anything fancy, just a 3-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood with tall pine trees and a backyard that smelled like wet earth after the rain. Dylan had a hammock, Janice had her own room, Grandma J's hideout she called it, and I had peace. There was no drama, no tension, no tightrope walking, just quiet meals, real laughter, and the gentle, steady beat of a life we'd built from the ground up. Then the past came calling again. I was brewing coffee one Saturday morning when my phone rang. Unknown number, but the area code made my stomach clench. I answered. Old habits die hard. Nora. It was my mom. Her voice cracked like thin ice. I didn't say anything, just waited. It's about Zach. Of course it was. He's gone. My hand tightened around the mug. Gone where? He left again. Some woman from Arizona. He said he couldn't take the pressure and she understands him better. He left a note this time at least. I didn't say a word. And the girls, they're still with us. It's been weeks. Your father and I are exhausted. We're not young anymore, Nora. There it was. She kept going. It's expensive. They eat like wolves, Nora. School supplies, dentist visits, shoes. It's too much. We thought maybe you could help. There was no apology. No, we were wrong. Just another handout. I let the silence sit there for a moment, let it stretch. Then I said, do you remember when I was sick? She paused. Of course. No, I mean, really remember. When I called you from the hospital, barely able to breathe, and you told me to find 10 grand or you'd put my son outside. That was different. It wasn't I said calm as the sky before a storm. You made a choice. You chose Zach's vacation over me. Over Dylan. Over your own daughter. We didn't know how serious it was. You didn't ask. You never even called after. You blocked me. You told me I created drama. She sighed. We thought you were being dramatic. And you always had this stubborn streak, Nora. You never made it easy to help you. I laughed. Cold, quiet. You were never trying to help. You were trying to control. And when I didn't bend, you left. I could hear her breathing on the other end. Sharp, shallow. You're still angry, she said. No, I replied. I'm done. But the girls, they're innocent. You're their aunt. And Dylan was your grandson. He still is. But you didn't care. So don't talk to me about family now. Her voice cracked again. We just need a little help, not forever, just some support. I paused, then said something I never thought I'd have the guts to say. You made your bed, now sleep in it. I hung up. Didn't block her. Didn't need to. The door didn't slam shut, it just faded like fog lifting from a hill in the morning light. Later that night, I told Janice what happened. She was slicing apples for Dylan's late-night snack. She raised an eyebrow. Let me guess, they want money. I nodded. She didn't say much, just handed me a slice of apple. You did the right thing, she said, and I believed her. Word eventually got around. Aunt Ellen in Florida emailed me a just checking in message that turned into a guilt trip by paragraph 2. I ignored it. Aunt Lena from Michigan left a voicemail. I don't blame you, sweetie, but they're struggling. I didn't call her back either. I was done playing the family's scapegoat. Zach's kids deserved better, no question, but I'd done my time, and I was done sacrificing my life to clean up someone else's mess, especially when the people asking for help were the same ones who turned their backs the moment things got hard. They weren't asking for support, they were demanding penance. Meanwhile, Dylan turned 9. His party was simple pizza, a dinosaur cake, a bouncy house we rented from a neighbor's cousin. He invited his whole class. Janice made lemonade from scratch and wore a t-shirt that said, "World's okayest grandma." He beamed all day, ran wild in the yard. At one point, he ran up to me and said, "Mom, this is the best day of my life." I kissed his forehead and said mine too. That night, after everyone left, Dylan curled up next to me on the couch. Will Grandma J live with us forever? He asked sleepily. She'll be around as long as she wants to be. I want her to stay forever. I squeezed his hand. Me too, buddy. Weeks passed. Seasons shifted. One afternoon, Janice and I were sitting on the porch watching Dylan ride his bike up and down the street, chasing a butterfly with zero success and full determination. She said out of nowhere, "I used to think strength looked like silence, like swallowing your pain and smiling through it." I looked over. "What changed?" "You," she said simply. "You fought back, not by yelling, by walking away." I blinked. I didn't feel strong, I felt alone. "You weren't," she said. "You just didn't know it yet." I wanted to cry, but I didn't, just nodded, because she was right. This life we built, it wasn't flashy, no white picket fence or matching pajamas for Instagram, but it was real, it was steady. And for the first time in my life, love wasn't conditional. Janice never asked for anything, never kept score. She was just there, at Dylan's soccer games, in the kitchen during storms, at school drop-off when I had early meetings. And I was there for her too, when her arthritis flared, when her cousin passed, when she needed someone to pick up Buster from the groomer because her knee was acting up. We weren't blood, but we were family. A few months ago, I got an email from Zach. Just a single line, "I'm sorry for everything. I hope you're okay." I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, because I didn't need to. Some apologies come too late to mean anything. Not because the hurt still burns, but because the healing's already done. We closed on our house last week. Bigger yard, one extra room. A garden patch in the back where Dylan's already decided he'll grow strawberries and maybe some carrots for Grandma J. We had dinner outside last night, just the three of us. Fireflies danced, the air smelled like soil and roasted veggies. Janice clinked her glass against mine and said, "To quiet beginnings." I raised mine. "To people who stay." Dylan lifted his juice box. "To strawberry carrots." We laughed. And in that moment I knew. The family I wanted was never behind me. They were right here all along. And we were finally home.